Welcome back everyone to the Visvim Pioneer channel. Today I wanted to review some of the essential Visvim items that I think every collector should have in some sort of capacity, in some sort of color variation or material composition. I got my order in for some gloves that I ordered from Essence. So it's not an essential for me because I live in Los Angeles where the winter time is essentially non-existent. For those in colder climates, gloves are probably something that you wear quite often. So it might be an essential for some people, but not necessarily for me. So it does come in the traditional Visvim paper bag with the little hoop thing that you unwrap. I did get these in a size medium large because I do have bare, mammoth hands or whatever. These are from spring summer 2025 in this olive vegetable tan lamb leather. They have been damage processed, so the treatment on them is extremely cool. Up until this point, I've kind of told you guys I haven't wanted to purchase a leather jacket because the pricing is outrageous. So I thought, you know what, let me get some kind of Visvim leather item, and I thought the gloves would be a cool addition to just to kind of round out the collection. So I have really big hands, and it looks like the medium large fits pretty well. So I kind of bought these blindly. I wasn't sure if they fit, but they do fit. So that's good. You guys are getting an honest reaction right now. Retail price was kind of up there. These were around $420. So after tax and shipping, they were $460 or something like that. The full glove is obviously composed of a lambskin. There's not much to it other than that. This olive colorway though, I think is extremely impressive. I believe for spring summer 2025 they also released a leather jacket in the same material. I think it might have been the New Rider or something like that. Regardless, I can't remember, but this color is extremely nice. It's a nice khaki brownish type of green, and it's just something really nice to look at. The leather's pretty soft. I guess I'll put both on. I don't know why I'm just wearing one. So again, these, like I mentioned, these are kind of loose but not big. They're kind of big but not too loose. I don't know if that makes any sense. I like the different variation and the color as well, and I don't know how this video is gonna play in regards to content. I've never recorded gloves, so I don't know if this is awkward or not, and I don't really know what to do with my hands.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
It'd be good just to hold them down by your side. Yeah, great.
I digress. So vegetable tan lamb leather, extremely soft, super comfortable. They're quite stiff right now. I'm sure as I wear them more, especially in the mornings when it's cold, they'll probably loosen up. But yeah, it's an extremely straightforward purchase. Again, I haven't owned any major Visvim leather items, and so I thought that this would be a nice way to kind of get into that, into that product line without spending, a Honda Civic on a leather jacket. Nothing super crazy, but I like the colorway, I like the material, they feel really soft, and I look forward to breaking these in. They're kind of the staples from the brand and those that have been inspired by classic footwear silhouettes that we already recognize and love, such as the Converse high tops, as well as the Adidas Stan Smiths. And with Visvim taking their interpretation and kind of modernizing it and improving upon the materials, I think that this is one of those key aspects that Visvim is known for. With that being said, we're going to take a look at the first model, and that is the Skagway Hi Patten in this navy colorway. So this pair of Skagways released in 2019, and I actually purchased them for roughly 50% off. I believe I paid around $300. So I'll be starting off by showing one of their classic models, and that's the Skagway Hi Patten in this navy colorway. So these are an obvious homage to the Converse Chuck Taylor, but I think what Visvim does here is extremely impressive from a material standpoint, and it's one of the key aspects that really separates this from its Converse counterpart. Starting off with the retail price, I believe these retailed around $600. I picked them up for 50% off at Kith a few years ago. I believe, for the most part, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're worth that $600 price tag, but you can definitely feel some of the quality differences when it comes to the Converse counterpart, which is why for the footwear that I'm going to be showing today, I believe that most of them aren't necessarily worth their retail price, but if you can pick them up on sale, I would highly recommend you do so, because for the most part, they'll last beyond their, their Nike counterpart, their Adidas counterpart, or their Converse counterpart. And I think that there's subtle little hints that kind of give it that Visvim flair as well. And there's some things that I think that beyond just the quality silhouette wise, that Visvim improves upon just a little bit. I've been wearing them ever since I got them in 2019. So these have 6 years of wear. And as you can see, the uppers for the most part are pretty solid. There's a slight hole here, but I think it kind of adds to the character. So the upper of this shoe is composed of a Japanese, almost like a duck canvas, and it's got a nicer texture than that you would find on a Converse. Like, it's softer, but in no way does it feel like it's not sturdy. The toe cap is composed of, I believe, a cow leather as well as a heel chimney back here. I do like the way that this blue kind of contrasts the blue of the upper. It's like a nice grayish blue tone that over time has faded and has really given this shoe character. The laces are just standard cotton laces. There's nothing crazy about that. And you do have that lightning bolt detail that wraps around the shoe. As you can see, I do wear these significantly, so there is some slight heel drag, but again, it's nothing crazy, especially with a rubber outsole. Like, you expect these to get worn over time. And I believe the fact that these have lasted this long, you know, for what's now been like 6 years, it kind of holds to the quality of the shoe. When it comes to the inside of the shoe, you do have a full leather, I believe it's a pigment-free leather lining. There is another hit of leather that I forgot to mention here, as well as the typical Visvim branded tag on the collar. So these I did get sized in a US 11, and this was when Visvim still hadn't improved upon the sizing of the Skagways. Like, these do fit me a little bit long, and I probably could have gone down to like a 10.5, but because I have a wide foot, I think that, you know, for the most part, this shoe has zero problems when it comes to wear. But for some of the older Skagway models, a lot of people recommend going, you know, half a size to a full size down. You do have that custom Visvim outsole as well as the branding hit right there on the forefront. And now taking a look at the left pair, again, there's nothing crazy going on with this model. To the untrained eye, it looks just like a Converse Chuck Taylor, which I think is a good thing. Like, it flies under the radar. And while some people may not like the branding here on the forefoot, I think it's a subtle enough hit to where no one's really gonna, you know, think it's an ostentatious or just a gaudy use of a logo. So I think that's perfectly fine. Just like Converse, there are metal eyelets as well as 2 vents on the interior of the shoe, you know, to let out moisture and things like that. And again, these have held up extremely well. I'm a really big fan of these. I would not purchase them at their current retail price because I think it's climbed up all the way to like $800 or $900, which to me is crazy. I think if you can pick these up anywhere from $300 to maybe $500, they're definitely worth picking up. So the next shoe that I'm going to be showing is the Corda-Folk. Now, this shoe is in the blue colorway, but really all the releases from 2023 for this particular season, they all just went based off of the color on the tongue as well as on the heel. So starting off with the upper, this is composed of a vegetable tanned calf leather, while the hits of blue leather are composed of a French vegetable tanned lamb leather. Now, it's obvious that the hits of the blue are much softer than the rest of the upper. The upper of this shoe has been kind of cracking a bit. I don't know if it's because it's been like kind of processed and treated with like some kind of like a plasticky coat, but it doesn't necessarily feel like the most premium leather, I would say. I know that most manufacturers typically treat their leather sneakers so that it's like this perfectly pristine white leather with like no imperfections. And obviously leather does not come like that. There is imperfections by design. And so I believe that that treatment kind of made it so that the leather of the upper got a little bit weakened. And I don't know if you guys can see it throughout the camera. So wherever I would normally crease my foot, there's these like cracks on the leather of the upper. And I have worn these a bit. I don't want to say that the wear that they've seen has been, you know, minor. These have definitely been worn a lot, but it's just interesting to see how the upper of this specific release has been kind of aging in the way that it is. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of it because it kind of almost reminds me of like the leather being used on fashion shoes, right? Think like Gucci's Common Projects and things like that. You definitely do have this like slight blue variation on the inside, which I think lends itself to me believing that these might be like a chrome tan leather, which I've heard isn't necessarily the worst thing, but it's definitely a way that some companies cheap out when it comes to processing and being able to mass produce some of their white sneakers and things like that. It kind of helps with making the leather uniform, but I kind of don't necessarily like the effect that it's having on the upper. But beyond that, I do like the quality of the lamb leather that's used on the blue hits. One of the highlights and one of the reasons why people like to pick up the Corda-Folk is because it does have a replaceable outsole. However, I haven't really seen anyone online replace it with the exact same outsole. Like, I don't know if that's something that you would contact Visvim through, or if you just go with like a local cobbler and replace it with like a Vibram or like a Margam rubber sole. I could see that potentially being a problem for the future. And I think that replaceable outsole component is one of the reasons these are marked up so high in regards to their retail price. So for this particular release, I believe retail was roughly $1,300. Again, I did not pick it up for that price. I believe I got it on sale at 17 Rain for about $500 or something like that. It was while it was on sale. And even at $500, I felt like it was pushing it, because a lot of white sneakers from several other brands kind of fall into that price range. And just, I haven't been necessarily the most impressed with the quality of this shoe, and I feel like I'd be even less impressed had I paid the full retail. But again, like the Skagway, for around $300 to $500, I would say these are definitely worth the price, at least this particular release. Like, I can't speak to the quality on other pairs that I don't own, but the quality on this particular pair hasn't necessarily been the best. I would say that compared to Visvim boots, their sneaker offerings to me aren't as good of a value. And to some, the boots aren't a good value to begin with, so that's another conversation, altogether. So on this cup sole, you do have this Visvim branding towards the heel. You also have this like leather insert here on the side that says Free International Laboratory. It does not come this yellow colorway. That's from wear, aging, and things like that. So just keep that in mind when you get it. These also came with like this separate blue color lace that I don't ever see myself using, but they are a cotton material nonetheless. I also forgot to say this for the Skagway, but just like every other Visvim release, these do come with the Visvim branded dust bag. The interior is composed of a pigment-free leather lining as well as the insole. From what I was reading, these do have a cork footbed, so they are extremely comfortable. And just like a Stan Smith, they're extremely versatile and easy to wear. Like, I have absolutely no problem wearing these. And again, like, while I am complaining a little bit about the quality of them, overall, like I mentioned before, if I were to pay $300 to $500 for these, I do think they're worth that price. Like, they're definitely an upgrade from like just the Stan Smith, and while the replaceable outsole component would make them almost like a forever shoe once you break them in and get them resold, I don't think they're necessarily worth 10 pairs of Stan Smiths, if that makes sense. Like, 5 pairs is okay when you compare retail price, but sometimes, the retail price on these can get a little carried away. One thing that I forgot to mention is the Visvim branding on the heel. You do have the VSVM on this little heel tab, which again, the leather on is extremely soft. So the fact that these are hand stitched also, I believe, adds to the retail price. Like, there's definitely quality here. It's just not as high as you would expect for the price point. There's also this Visvim branded outsole, and again, this outsole does come white, but the fact that I've worn these and I haven't really cleaned them, they have yellowed a bit, which I personally prefer that look. I like the contrast between this like off-white yellow outsole and the interior hit here amongst the like all complete white upper. Sometimes when like a shoe's too white, it's almost too pristine and it's kind of like hospital looking, and I don't like that. So I like the fact that these have aged and there's some definite wear and tear. For me, these are true to size because I have a wide foot, but I definitely do have a little bit of wiggle room in the toe box. So if you went down half a size, I could definitely see that working for most people. Wrapping up classic and essential Visvim silhouettes, we have the Maliseet Shaman-Folk. So this is one of those classic Visvim items that a lot of people gravitated towards, especially when collecting Visvim very early on. The moccasin hybrid style footwear is something that they're synonymous with, right? Think FBTs, the Lamos, and things like that. So this particular release is the sand colorway from 2017. I think retail for these was around $700. Again, I did not pay retail for these. I paid around $300 or high 200s. I want to say I picked them up from Slam Jam, and I'll probably check my email just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure I picked them up from Slam Jam for like a little less than $300. So the upper is composed of a vegetable tan suede in this obvious sand color. I like the little beads here on the forefoot. They're a nice little touch of color that kind of adds to the moccasin Native American inspired design of the shoe. You do have the classic Visvim outsole that's used on most of these different pairs. I like the little leather hit as well right there at the center of your foot. You do have this TPU stabilizer similar to what you have with the Virgils, with the regular FBTs and things like that, as well as this fringe detail. However, unlike the traditional FBTs, this fringe detail is not removable, so just keep that in mind. But it honestly adds to the silhouette of this, and I wouldn't remove it even if I could. As you can see, these do have leather laces. One of the problem with this release that I noticed though is that the leather laces are very thin, so whenever you tie your shoes too aggressively, they rip. So as you can see, these have been torn, so I can't really tie them the way that they're supposed to be. And it's one of the reasons I haven't worn them lately, because I need to buy replacement laces. But these shoes are essentially 8 years old at this point, so at some point something's got to give. My understanding is that the outsole is not replaceable, but I've seen some people replace it with Visvim outsoles. They just kind of add like a traditional Christie sole or something like that. The interior is composed of a full leather insole, and then the suede continues along the inside of that. I don't want to call them like a beginner like item or model when it comes to this brand, but when you wear shoes like this and you wear like the Virgil and you wear like the FBTs, it does feel like, you know, like you're relatively new to the brand, which I guess would play into what the topic of this video is anyways, right? Picking up like Visvim essentials and things like that. So I would say overall, if you don't have a pair of the Maliseet, you should definitely probably have a pair of the FBTs or like the Lamos and things like that. When it comes to sizing, I did get these in a US size 12, and that is because I tried on the 11 and it was too small for me. I do feel like personally this release ran on like the smaller side, so if I was you guys, I'd probably size up if you were to find like a secondhand pair, or maybe stay true to size, because if they're secondhand, they're probably, you know, broken in and you'll definitely have room. Taking a look at the left pair, same thing with the right, nothing much changes. You have the same details with the fringe collar and this little hit back here on like the chimney of the shoe. The Visvim branding towards the bottom of the outsole, the same leather hits, the same beads, which have, you know, not gone anywhere. I did have the same lace issue on this one. They did start tearing a bit too. So once I'm able to get replacement laces on these, you know, I'll be sure to bring them out every once in a while. Thank you all again for tuning into the channel. If you want to learn more about any of these releases, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll make sure to get back to you with more info. And I think the footwear shown here is kind of like some of the essentials and classic Visvim releases that most people would either gravitate towards or consider buying. I know that the Skagway is an extremely popular model that a lot of people enjoy wearing. The Corda-Folk has been widely regarded as one of the best white sneakers that you could purchase, and so I thought I'd give my honest perspective on my thoughts on the particular release that I have. When it comes to the Maliseet Shaman-Folk, of course, Visvim is always known to have exceptional hybrid footwear models that are heavily inspired by Native American moccasins, and I think that this particular pair is an easy shoe to wear, especially in the spring, summertime, when you don't necessarily want a high top, but kind of want that same vibe going for you. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, thank you for tuning in. Peace. These shoes are essentially 8 years old at this